In the Time of the Butterflies by Julia Alvarez, Part 3, Chapter 11, B, the last part. Pages torn out. Saturday, April 30th, 100 days. After you lose your fear, the hardest thing here is the lack of beauty. There's no music to listen to, no good smells, ever, nothing pretty to look at, even faces that would normally be pretty like Kiki's or beautiful like Minerva's have lost their glow. You don't even want to look at yourself, afraid of what you'll see. The little pocket mirror that they sent us is kept in our hiding place for anyone who wants a look. A couple of times I've dug it up, not on account of vanity, but to make sure I'm still here, I haven't disappeared. Wednesday, May 25th, 125 days, 1,826 days to go. Oh God. I've not been able to write for a while. My heart just hasn't been in it. Monday, Minerva and I got arraigned. It was my first time out of here since that other Monday in April I don't want to remember, and Minerva's first since we got here in February. The guards told us to put on our street clothes, so we knew right off we weren't going to La Forti. I rubbed rose water in my hair, then braided it with Santiclo's ribbon, humming the whole time while the little boat song my Jackie loves to clap to. I was so sure we were going to be released. Minerva wagged her finger at me and reminded me of the new cardinal rule she's added to the other three. Stay hopeful, but do not expect anything. And she was right, too. We were driven down to the courthouse for our joke of a trial. No one was there to represent us, and we couldn't talk or defend ourselves either. The judge told Minerva if she tried one more time, she would be in contempt, and the sentence and fine would be increased. 5 years and a fine of 5,000 pesos for each of us. Minerva just threw back her head and laughed, and of course I bowed mine and cried. Pages torn out. Wednesday, June 15th. I've decided to stop counting. It's just too depressing. My journal has stayed in our hiding place, everyone helping themselves to clean pages when they need paper. I haven't minded. Not much has mattered for days on end. Minerva says I'm understandably depressed. The sentence on top of what I went through. She read what I wrote, and she wants me to tell the OAS when and if they ever come about what happened at La Forti, but I'm not sure I can do that. You've had nothing to be ashamed of, Minerva says, all fierce. She's doing my face in sculpture, so I'm supposed to sit still. Yes, the authorities are now encouraging us to start hobbies, again, the OAS, on their backs. Minerva has taken up sculpture in prison of all places. She and Mama bring some plaster and tools. After each session, Santiclo is supposed to collect them, but he's pretty lenient with us. So we now have a couple of little scalpels in our hiding place, along with our other contraband, the knife, the sewing scissors, the pocket mirror, 4 nails, and the file, of course, this diario. What is this arsenal for? I asked Minerva. What are we going to do with it? Sometimes I think revolution has become something like a habit for Minerva. Friday, June 24th, hot as hell in here. We now have 2 new women guards. Minerva thinks they've been assigned to us to impress the OAS with the prison system's delicacy towards women prisoners. Delicacy? These women are as tough or tougher than the men, especially the fat one, Valentina. She's nice enough to us politicals, but a real witch to the others, seeing as the OAS won't be investigating their treatment. The non-political girls have such wonderful foul mouths. Here's their little chant when Valentina is out of earshot. Valentina, la guardana, stupid bloody fool, went to suck milk from a cow, but got under the bowl. The guards are all worried about the rumored coming of the OAS. We've heard that if a political complains, the guards in charge of that cell will be in very hot water indeed, maybe even shot. El Jefe cannot afford any more international trouble right now. During our little school, Minerva warns us not to be swayed by these rumors or manipulated by, quote, fine, unquote, treatment. We must let the committee know the real solution, or this hell will go on. She gives me a pointed look as she says this. Monday, June 27th, mid-afternoon. I've told myself, Mate, don't pay them any attention, but with so few distractions in this place, what else am I supposed to think of? There's quite a gossip underground in this place. It relies mostly on our knocking system, but notes are also passed and brief exchanges sometimes take place in the visitors' hall on Thursdays. News travels. And it really has hurt to hear the ugly rumor going around. My Leandro, along with Valera, Fafa, Faxas, Manzano, and Macarula, is being accused of being a traitor. Minerva says, Mate, don't listen to evil tongues. But sometimes she gets so angry herself as what comes through the wall that she says she is going to tell the whole world what happened to me, what persuasion was used on poor Leandro. Oh, please, Minerva, I plead, please. The movement is falling apart with all of this mistrust and gossip. Manolo is so worried he has tapped out a communique that has come all the way down the line. The comrades had his permission to work on that book. There is nothing in it but information the Sim had already collected after months of tortures. Manolo admits even he talked, giving names of those who were already caught or had escaped abroad. Compañeros y compañeras. We must not fall prey to petty divisions, but concentrate on our next point of attack. The OAS members, when they come, if sanctions are imposed, the goat will fall. We are suffering a setback, but we have not been beaten. Liberty or death. But the terrible rumors continue. Tuesday morning, June 28th, a bad night. I couldn't sleep all night for how worked up I was about the rumors. Then to top it off, the stench kept everyone else up too. We're all angry at Dinora for going in the bucket, especially after we made our agreement to use the outdoor latrine at night so the whole cell wouldn't have to endure bad smells while we're trying to sleep. And except for Bloody Juan, the guards are willing to take us out, especially Tiny, who gets his chance to, quote, unquote, frisk us in the dark. It certainly comes out, living in such close quarters with people, which ones are only looking out for themselves and which ones are thinking about the whole group. Dinora is a perfect example of the selfish kind. She steals into our food locker, she swipes our underwear from the central rod when we aren't looking, and she has been known to report us for wall tapping with cell number 60. At first, Minerva made excuses about how Dinora learned bad civic habits from a corrupt system, but ever since Dinora turned in Minerva's treasured packet of little notes from Manolo, my open-minded sister has become quite guarded around this so-called victim. I know I've been reluctant to share certain things, but I usually reflect a moment and end up giving most of my things away. I always check with everyone to see if no one else wants the lamp a certain night, and I never hog my turn at the window for fresh air or drying laundry. If we made up the perfect country Minerva keeps planning, I would fit in perfectly. The only problem for me would be if the self-serving ones were allowed in. Then I believe I'd turn into one of them in self-defense. Thursday night, June 30, heat unbearable. Santi Clo brought us some paper fans. We found a great new hiding place. My hair. This is how it happened. Patria slipped me a clipping today, and I knew I'd be checked, like we always are, going in and out of the visitors' hall. It's a pretty serious offense if you're caught with contraband. You might lose visiting privileges for as long as a month or even be put in solitary. I tried slipping it back to her, but Bloody Juan was our patrol, and his hawk eyes weren't going to miss twice. I was getting more and more anxious as the time was almost up. That newspaper clipping was burning a hole in my lap. Minerva made a hand sign we learned from Balbina that means, give it to me. But I was not going to let her be caught and take the blame. Then I felt the heaviness of my braid down my back, and I got the idea. I'm always fooling with my hair, pleating it, unpleating it, a nervous habit of mine that's gotten worse here. So I folded that piece of paper really small, and pretending I was neatening up my braid, I wound it into my hair. And that's how the whole prison found out about the assassination attempt. Betancourt accusations unfounded. Ciudad Trujillo, Dominican Republic. Spokesman Manuel de Moya expressed his outrage at the vicious and unfounded accusations of President Romulo Betancourt of Venezuela. Betancourt has accused the Dominican government of being involved in the attempt on his life that occurred in the capital city of Caracas, June 24. The president was injured when a parked car exploded as his own limousine paraded by. Speaking from his hospital bed, Betancourt announced he has again filed charges with the Organization of American States. That's the OAS. When asked why a small, peace-loving island would strike out against him, President Betancourt confabulated a plot against his life by the Dominican government. Ever since I brought charges of his human rights abuses before the OAS, Trujillo has been after me. De Moya regretted these insults to the virgin dignity of our benefactor and expressed the openness of our government to any and all investigations from member nations who wish to ascertain the falsity of these malicious charges. The OAS has accepted the invitation, and a 5-member committee is due here by the end of July. Friday night, July 1, no one can sleep, and not just because of the heat. The mood here has changed overnight. Our divided movement is pulling together, gossip and grievances cast aside. The walls have been nothing but knockings all day long, the latest news I smuggled in. Trujillo is in hot water now, and he knows it. He has put on a good show when the OAS comes. There are all kinds of rumors that we are all to be pardoned. Everyone is so hopeful, except, of course, the Guardias. When the gringos come, Santiclo asks us this evening, you girls aren't going to complain about me now, are you? Yes, Santiclo, Delia teases him. We're going to say you had a soft heart for certain prisoners. You didn't treat us all equally. I never got mints or a ribbon for my hair. Santiclo looks a little frightened, so I say, she's just teasing you, Santiclo. You've been a real friend. I say that to be polite, but then I get to thinking about it, and it is true. That's why we nicknamed him Santiclo, after the big, jolly American saint who brings gifts to those who don't believe in Jesus or the Three Kings. Santa Claus. Sunday night, July 10, Mama sent us a flashlight. No OAS yet, but lots more rumors. The beginning of last week, everyone thought they'd be here by the end of the week, but now the rumor is they're waiting to see if Betancourt will live. They're working out how they'll conduct their investigations. Just lock them in here with us, Sina says. We'll give them an earful. Yes, Denora says. You girls give them an earful, and the rest of us will give them something else. Everybody bursts out laughing. We've talked openly about it, and I can't say I really miss it, but some of the girls are ready to scream. They want a man so bad. And I should add, it's not just the dubious ladies saying this. Minerva is the biggest surprise of all. These girls can be so vulgar. Lord, in 6 months my ears have heard what they hadn't known about in 24 years. For instance, the girls have an elaborate system of body clues by which they can tell what kind of a man you're suited for. Say your thumb is fat and kind of short, then you're bound to like men with a similar endowment elsewhere. I happen to have a short but slender thumb, and that proves I'm really compatible with a short, slender man with average endowments. Phew! Some of these girls are sleeping together, I know. That's the only thing Santiclo won't allow. He says it's just not right. Once a woman is with a woman, she's ruined for a man. I myself had a close encounter that turned out to be all right with Magdalena the other night after our talk. Valentina just went by on her sneaky feet. I better put this away and not try the devil twice. To be continued. Monday afternoon, July 11th, quiet time. I mentioned the close encounter I had with Magdalena. This is what happened. She was visiting over here one night, and we got to talking about ourselves, and finally she told me her whole life story. I'll say this, it's enough to break my heart. I've been going around for months thinking no one has suffered like I have. Well, I'm wrong. Magdalena has taught me more about how privileged I really am than all of Minerva's lectures about class. When Magdalena was 13, her mother died, and she didn't have any place to go, so she took a job as a maid for a rich, important family. The De La Torres, real snobs. Night after night, she was, quote, unquote, used by the young man of the house. She had never reported it to her mistress since she thought it was part of her job. When she got pregnant, she did go to the Doña, who accused her of being an ungrateful, lying whore, and threw her out in the street. Magdalena gave birth to a baby girl, Amantina, and for years they lived hand to mouth. Magdalena says the trash heap near the old airport was their bodega, and their home was an abandoned shed near the runway. Pobrecitas, I kept saying. At some point, the De La Torres must have caught sight of the blonde-headed, hazel-eyed little girl. They decided she was related to their son. They drove over to the new house where Magdalena was working and took the poor screaming child away. Tears brimmed in my eyes. Any story of a separated mother and daughter can get me started these days. That's when Magdalena gave me this real serious look, like she was grateful to me for understanding. But then the gratitude turned into something else. She came forward like she was going to tell me a secret and brushed her lips to mine. I pulled back, shocked. "Aye, Magdalena," I said. "I'm not that way, you know." She laughed. "Girl, I don't know what you mean by that way, like it's a wrong turn or something. My body happens to also love the people my heart loves." It made sense the way she said that. Still, I felt really uncomfortable in my narrow bunk. I wanted her knee touching my knee not to mean anything, but it did. I wanted her to leave, but I didn't want to hurt her feelings. Thank goodness she got the hint and went on with the rest of her story. Quiet time is over. Minerva's hollering for us all to come to the exercises. I'll finish this tonight. Later, the rest of the story is that Magdalena tried to get Amantina back. One night she stole into the De La Torre house and climbed the same back stairs the young man used to climb down, and she got as far as the upstairs hall when she was caught by the Doña coming out of her bedroom in her nightdress. Magdalena demanded her child back and pulled out a knife to show she meant business. Instead of shock, I felt glee. "Did you succeed?" "What do you think I'm doing here?" she said. "I got 20 years for attempted murder. When I got out," she continued, "my little girl will be my age when I came in." Then Magdalena began to cry like her tears were spilling out of her broken heart. I didn't even think about her kissing me earlier. I just reached out and took her in my arms like Mama always does me. Saturday afternoon, July 23. Leandro is finally here with us. El Rayo says he's in Pavilion B with Manolo and Pedrito and the rest of the Central Committee. Also, the ridiculous book is out. Complot Develado. No one here has seen it yet, but we've heard it's an album of all our photographs with a description of how the movement got started. Nothing that hasn't been in the papers for months already. I hope all those who wag their tongues feel ashamed of themselves. Wednesday evening, August 3. We got real chicken and rice tonight. Minerva and Sina have been talking strategy to me since the news was announced this morning. It's as final as anything can be around here. The OAS Peace Committee comes this Friday. Only one prisoner from each pavilion will be interviewed. The head guards were given the choice, and they picked me. Minerva says it's because they don't think I'll complain. And you have to, she says. You have to, Mate. They haven't done anything, I protest. They're victims too, like you say. But victims can do a lot of harm, and this isn't personal, Mate, she adds. This is principle. I never was good at understanding the difference so crucial to my sister. Everything's personal to me that's principle to her, it seems. We've heard that the interviews won't be supervised, but that doesn't mean a thing here. The hall will be bugged with secret microphones, no doubt. It would be suicide to talk openly. So Minerva and Sina have written up a statement I must somehow slip to the committee, signed by the 14th of June movement. There's something else, Minerva says, looking down at her hands. We need someone to write a personal statement. What about what Sina went through, I say. Have Sina write up something. It's not the same. Please, Mate. You don't even have to write it up, she adds. You can just tear out the pages in your journal and put them in with our statement. There are other considerations, I tell her. What about Santiclo? If the statements are traced to me, he'll be shot. Minerva holds me by the arms. Revolution is not always pretty, Mate. Look at what they did to Leandro, to Manolo, what they did to Florentino, to Papien, to you, for God's sake. It won't stop unless we stop it. Besides, those are just rumors about the Guardias being shot. I'll see, I say at last. I'll see. Aye, Mate, promise me, she says, looking in my eyes. Please promise me. So I say to her the only thing I can say. I promise you this. I'll be true to what I think is right. Minerva has never heard such talk from me. Fair enough, she says. Fair enough. Saturday, August 6th. Minerva has asked me 12 times what happened. 12 times I've told her the others the story. Rather, I've tried to keep up with their questions. How many members were in the committee? 7 in all, though 2 looked like they were just to translate. What was the session? Where was the session? In the visitors' hall. That's why we didn't have visiting hours Thursday. The authorities spared themselves the trouble of having to bug a new place. How long was my session? 10 minutes, though I waited 2 hours outside the door with a very nervous Santiclo. Then, most importantly, did I get a chance to slip the papers to the member of the committee? Yes, I did. When I was leaving, a serious young man came forward to thank me and to leave me out. He spoke a very polite, pretty Spanish, probably Venezuelan or maybe Paraguayan, but the way he was looking me over, I could tell he wanted a closer look, checking for scars or skin pallor, something. I'd given La Victoria a good report and said that I had been treated fairly. What everyone else from the other cells had probably told them as well. Just as he was turning away, I loosened my braid and let the first folded note fall on the floor. When he saw it, he seemed surprised and went to pick it up. But then he thought better of it and kicked it under the table instead. He gave me this pointed look. I returned him a slight nod. Santiclo met me right outside the door. His jolly round face looked so afraid. As he was walking me back down the corridor, he wanted to know how it went. Don't worry, I said, and I smiled at him. It was actually his blue ribbon that I had used to hold both notes twisted in my braid. I unwound that ribbon just enough so the first note with the statement Minerva and Sina had drafted slipped out. It was signed the 14th of June movement, so it can't be traced to any one cell. And what are they going to do? Shoot all the prison guards? A second note with my story was lodged further up in my braid. Maybe it was the sight of that ribbon Santiclo had given me when I was so broken. I don't know. But right then and there I decided not to drop the second note. I just couldn't take any chance and hurt my friend. As far as Minerva is concerned, I kept my promise to her. I did what I thought was right. But I think I'll wait till sometime in the future to tell her exactly what that was. Sunday afternoon, August 7th. We're having a little party later. We've been told we are ready for our release tomorrow. None of the men are being freed, though, only the women. Gallantry so to impress the OAS is what Minerva guesses. I'm so afraid she's going to get high-minded on me again, but she's agreed to go since this is not a pardon but a release. I think Minerva is close to her own breaking point. She has been acting funny. Sometimes she just turns to me and says, "What?" as if I had asked her something. Sometimes her hand goes to her chest as if she's making sure she has a heartbeat. I'm glad we will soon be out of here. What hurts is thinking of those I'm leaving behind. Every time I look at Magdalena, I have to look away. I've learned so much from you, I tell her. This has been the most meaningful experience of my whole life, I tell her. I'm going to start crying before the party even starts. Late night. The moonlight is streaming in through our little window. I can't sleep. I'm sitting up in my bunk, writing my last entry in the space left, sobbing in the quiet way you learn in prison so you don't add to anyone else's grief. I feel sad to be leaving. Yes, strange as it sounds, this has become my home. These girls are like my sisters. I can't imagine the lonely privacy of living without them. I tell myself the connection will continue. It does not go away because you leave, and I begin to understand the revolution in a new way. At our farewell party, I took a chance Denora might report me and had all of them sign my book like an autograph book. Some of them I taught how to write their names, so this is a real memento of my time here. As for the book itself, Santiclo is going to smuggle it out for me. We will be inspected thoroughly, I'm sure, when we leave. Then we passed around our little hoard of sugar cubes and crackers and peanuts. I had a couple of bars of chocolates left, and I cut those in thin slices. Even Denora added some guava paste she'd been hoarding. Then we looked at each other, and there was such a sad, heartfelt feeling among us. Minerva started to say something, but she couldn't get it out. So we just held each other, and one by one, we wished each other well, and then goodbye. For the OAS Committee investigating human rights abuses, this is the journal entry of what happened at La Forti on Monday, April 11th, 1960, to me, a female political prisoner. I'd rather not put my name. Also, I have blotted out some names as I'm afraid of getting innocent people in trouble. Please don't put it in the papers either, as I am concerned for my privacy. When they came for me that morning, I thought that maybe I was being taken to the officers' lounge for questioning, but instead, Bloody Juan escorted me down the stairs and outside. There was a wagon waiting. It took me only a minute to realize where we were going. I kept looking out the window, hoping that I'd be seen by someone who might recognize me and tell my family they had spotted me in a police wagon headed towards La Forty. How strange that the sun was shining so innocently, that people were walking around as if there were no such thing in the world as poor souls in my predicament. I tried getting some explanation as to why I was being taken in, but Bloody Juan is not one to explain things. By the time we got to La Forty, I was shaking so bad I couldn't get out of the wagon. I felt ashamed that they had to carry me in like a sack of beans. There was a bunch of them already waiting in the interrogation room. Tall fat Johnny and his Hitler mustache, the one called Candido with the curly hair, then a bug-eyed one that kept cracking his knuckles to make the sound of breaking bones. They stripped me down to my slip and brassiere. It made me lie down on this long metal table, but they didn't buckle the belts I saw dangling from the sides. I've never known such terror. My chest was so tight I could barely breathe. Johnny said, "Hey, pretty lady, don't get all excited." "We're not going to hurt you," the one called Candido said. That made me shake all the more. When the door opened and Blank was brought in, I didn't immediately recognize him. A walking skeleton, that's what he looked like, shirtless, his back covered with blisters the size of dimes. I sprang up, but Bloody Juan pushed me back down on the table. "You lay down nice like you're in bed waiting for him," Bug-Eyes said. Then he said something gross about what torture does to the necessary organ. Johnny told him to shut up. "What do you want with her?" Blank shouted. I could tell he was scared. "We want her to help us persuade you," Johnny said in a voice that was too calm and rational for this eerie place. "She has nothing to do with this," Blank cried. "Are you saying you've reconsidered?" Johnny asked. But Blank stood his ground. "I'm not discussing the matter further unless you let her go." That's when Bug-Eyes slammed him with the fist, knocking him down. How dare scum dictate terms to the captain? Then all of them joined in kicking Blank until he was writhing in agony on the floor. I was screaming for them to stop. It felt like my very own stomach was being punched, and that's when the pains as bad as contractions began. Then Johnny asked me if I could persuade Blank. After all, blank, 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 had all reconsidered. So the blank is a blacked out spot in this note. I was so tempted to say, "I, blank, save yourself, us," but I couldn't. It was as if that wouldn't have been the real way to let them kill us. So I told these monsters that I would never ask Blank to go against his conscience, what his conscience told him was right. "Two of a kind," the one called Candido said. "We'll have to use stronger persuasions." "I guess," Johnny said. "Tie her down." Bug-Eyes stood before me holding a rod with a little switch. Then he touched me with it. My whole body jumped with exquisite pain. I felt my spirit snapping loose, soaring above my body, and looking down at the scene. I was about to float off in a haze of brightness when Blank cried out, "I'll do it! I'll do it!" And down I went, sucked back into the body like water down a drain. Next thing I knew, Blank was calling out my name and shouting, "Tell them I had to do it!" as he was being dragged away. Johnny seemed in a bad mood at all this commotion. "Get him out of here," he said. Then to Bloody Juan, "Get her dressed and take her back." I was left alone in that room with a handful of guards. I could tell they were all ashamed of themselves, avoiding my eyes, quiet as if Johnny were still there. Then Bloody Juan gathered up my clothes, but I wouldn't let him help me. I dressed myself and walked out to the wagon on my own 2 feet.